You're listening to Themes and Memes, a different kind of movie review. My name is Adam, and with me here I have my co-host Aaron. How are you doing today, Aaron?
Very good. Hope you're doing the same, Adam.
Yeah, I'm okay, and today we will be reviewing another film. As promised in a most recent episode, we said we would be reviewing the film CHAPPiE. A recent film released, I think, in January, maybe February. I can't remember. Actually, no, I think it was March. But yeah, it's a Neill Blomkamp film. So, same guy that directed District 9 and Elysium, which we also reviewed about a year ago, thereabouts. And yeah, it's quite an engaging, entertaining film on a number of different levels. But it's also a very, very strange film as well, isn't it, Aaron?
Yeah, it's crazy. I tried to see this before, and if you listen to the previous episode of the podcast, you'll know that I didn't quite make it to the theater. I'm glad that I did finally, because I actually really enjoyed this film for the most part. And I'll also mention just right away here, because I wanted to, that I had an odd synchronicity with this movie in that where I was in my own thoughts, I was that day that I went to the theater, my thoughts lined up almost perfectly with the theme of the movie, which I found odd. And generally speaking, I was thinking in my head before going to the theater about artificial general intelligence, an advanced AI that can actually think, and one that would come about with actual human-like consciousness and emotion. If that were to actually come about in the real world, that might actually be a good thing. However, this was the other thought I had, like, okay, it's something that actually has emotion, that could be cool. However, I thought that was very unlikely to happen due to a number of reasons. The number one reason being where AI research is actually coming from. And if you had some emotional, highly intelligent machine that actually had the power, the capability to have empathy and things like that, it would actually be a huge threat to the military-industrial complex, the powers that be, because it could take over from them. It could depose them, and it could be it could actually be benevolent. So that would be actually a bad thing, I think, according to the powers that be, and that's what was in my mind. And this film gets into those ideas, actually.
Yeah, it does. Like the previous two films that Blomkamp was famous for. And directed. It's set in Johannesburg in South Africa, and it sort of centers around a military-industrial corporation. And the basic premise with this film is that this military-industrial corporation, which is called Tetraval, which I found to be kind of an interesting name. I'm not quite sure what to make of it. But
yeah. I thought the same thing. It seemed very accurate to me. I'm like, that would be a real name for one of those companies. That's what I thought. Yeah,
it sounds like something you've heard before, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, so we have this military-industrial corporation in Johannesburg, and this is, set in the future at some point. Once again, dystopian future, society's out of control, rioting, blah-de-blah. And this corporation has provided the Johannesburg police force with a whole army of droid robots, very, very similar in appearance to the ones that we see in the film Elysium. And so we're sort of familiarized with this kind of whole scenario and the corporation itself, and we're shown one of the developers of these droids. They're called Scouts in the film. Is this kind of a young genius AI researcher who is kind of independently working on a project to create a fully sentient, conscious form of artificial intelligence. And he's constantly pushing the company to allow him to test this thing out, and they have no interest in it because they're all just about big contracts and, and money, and they don't care. So
they want none of it. Yeah,
they want nothing to do with it. They're just he's the typical sort of what's the word?
Well, this character I found very interesting. His name's Deon. He's the guy who actually developed the robot police force. He's the guy who created them. But beyond that, there's more to him. He's a unique character. He's a mechanical engineer that is also creative and sensitive, and he's an idealist. However, he's working within the confines of the military-industrial complex, and because of that, he has to actually break the rules to follow his sort of creative project, his AGI project. That's what his true love, and he can't do that within the rules of the system that he's in.
Yeah, that's right. It reminds me in many ways of the film The Machine, which we've also reviewed, where we have the genius AI developer whose kind of creativity and sort of inspiration is being stifled by the corporate interests, of the company that he works for, and he just kind of has to go along with it because it's, there's no other place that he could do the kind of research and get the kind of funding and be involved in that kind of world. So it's kind of he has to make that compromise. But
and Deon does go about breaking the rules to get a hold of one of those police robots so that he can install his project he's been working on at home, his AGI hard disk, or wherever he puts that into the police robot, and he has to break a lot of rules to do that.
Yeah, he does. But obviously he's very inspired, and he's absolutely convinced that this is something amazing, and that whatever it is, it's going to be wonderful and fascinating, and it will bring about some kind of, I don't know, whatever he has. And as you say, he's an idealist, so he feels very much that this is a good thing. This is something we should be exploring, and that somehow, the creation of AI will be a good thing for humanity and for the human interests and whatnot. And there's even a little sort of tagline on the poster for CHAPPiE in the cinemas, which says, "Humanity's last hope isn't human," which I found very, very interesting.
Yeah, that's odd.
But I guess we can get into that later on. But excuse me, the parallel with what Deon is doing in the film, we see a group of gangsters in Johannesburg who have just tried to do some drug deal. It's all gone wrong. They've lost a whole bunch of money or drugs or something. They've gotten into debt with a really, sort of tough gangster, and they're in a position where they owe him $20 million by the end of the week or whatever it is, and they're sort of stressing out. And so their plan is to catch Deon and make him reprogram one of the robots to act for them and to in their interest to basically be a gangster and to go and help them on heists and things like that. And so that's basically what happens. This gang go and capture Deon, and who just happens to have stolen a malfunctioning robot from his employer to take home to test. And they capture him, bring him into their kind of lair, and sort of their interests kind of coincide with his, and that they want him to reprogram a robot for their own interests, and he also wants to sort of, I guess, reprogram a robot or put his own, consciousness file or whatever it is he's got into the robot. And so,
they both have a vested interest in keeping this robot alive and seeing it through to develop further.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of at odds with each other. Deon, the mechanical engineer, and the gang, which is played by the band D. Antwood. So there's a lot of tension there. However, they're working together at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. They've got common interests, but there's a lot of tension and conflict.
A lot of guns being pointed at Deon, things like that.
Yeah. But that's an interesting little note there with the fact that Blomkamp chose to cast the D. Antwood, the South African sort of rave, hip hop, I don't know what you would call them, band.
Yeah, electronic or some.
Yeah. It's really weird music. It's kind of like happy hardcore meets gangster rap, or
I don't know what genre you call it. No.
Yeah, it's
bizarre. It's weird.
It's bizarre. It's like, I mean, if we want to talk about Deon as a band, I mean, that's like a whole other podcast. But I mean, they kind of fit really well with the story in a lot of ways, and we'll get into that later on. But yeah, that's kind of what happens. Their interests kind of converge at one point, and they install this new CPU into this malfunctioning robot, and he becomes sentient.
Yeah, comes to life. And he's like a baby at first. That's what the deal is. He's a little child.
Yeah. It reminds me, sorry, I was just going to say, it reminds me a lot of Short Circuit, actually.
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It almost feels to me like the Short Circuit for the new generation, because Short Circuit starts out, Journey 5 starts out kind of similar, with a similar kind of demeanor, almost kind of childish.
He's definitely
and innocent.
childlike and innocent. They play that up in that movie for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I saw that CHAPPiE took a lot of nods to plenty of movies. Certainly Short Circuit, you can see, I'd say to the hilt, they're taking from RoboCop. There's so many similarities. The fact that the CHAPPiE robots are law enforcement, there you go. Even the voice that they have sounds like RoboCop's voice. The factory location they shoot in for a lot of movie looks very much similar to the one in RoboCop. And then you've got this moose robot, which we'll talk about more later, but that looks almost exactly like Ed 209 in RoboCop.
Yeah. I mean, he's obviously drawn from a lot of previous science fiction films dealing with robotics. In this, I watched the interview with Blomkamp on this one, and he was talking about the fact that the question was posed to him. What are your main influences, or what were your main influences in making this film? What other films in this kind of genre would you say that you drew from in some way? And he would say, well, he said, ideally speaking, no influences at all. Obviously pop cultures.
He said that.
Yeah, I mean, this the way he said it was that he said, yes, of course, there will be general influences in society and in pop culture in general, which are always going to have some kind of influence on you.
Yeah.
In terms of, just the things that you're interested in and the kinds of ideas creatively that you come up with in a creative project. There's always. But
ideally, it's a unique project.
Well, yeah, and he said ideally it's a unique project, and I think what he was trying to say was that ideally it is original. Ideally, I would like to say that this film.
There's new ideas. I'm sure that's what he's hinting at. There's new ideas in this for sure, and there are. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of angry, to be quite honest. And that he didn't say, yeah, I took a lot of stuff from RoboCop. I mean,
well, it's funny you mentioned that, because in the interview in question, they actually mentioned RoboCop, and they said the interviewers felt very much themselves that he had drawn a lot from RoboCop, and he played that down. He played that down as if it was like, well, maybe, and I'm familiar with the film, and it was kind of like, well, it's just a general pop cultural influence, but I wasn't thinking about RoboCop when I made this film.
Yeah. Who knows what's going on there? Odd.
There's. I mean, I've done quite a bit of searching around to try and find interviews with him on the film, and try and glean some little bit of interesting information about his views on the whole thing, or his experiences, or what have you. And the comments that he makes about the film and the story of making it, and the relationships with the actors and all the producers and all the rest of it it's a bit. A lot of the answers he gives are kind of glib. They're kind of superficial, and I don't know. I almost get the impression that he doesn't want to go into too much detail on certain issues.
Yeah, it sounds that way from your description, at least. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, perhaps there are other interviews out there with him which go into more detail, but he really keeps it very basic. And he talks just about it in terms of the nuts and bolts of how this film was made, rather than what the influences were, or what I was trying to get across, or what this represents, or what this symbolizes, or
you find that a lot in those making of documentaries. They don't get into the meaning of the film so much, not typically, sometimes, but a lot of times it's just, okay, we made this effect with this, and here's our technical team, and that sort of thing. So I don't know. But I don't know. I'd like to spend a bit of time talking about the aspect of the fact that CHAPPiE, the machine, is a child, and the ideas that they're raising, both the Deon character and the gang, D. Antwood, they are parents to CHAPPiE. And so it's a story of parenthood in one sense. What do you have to say about that, Adam?
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the other marketing lines for this film, and I think this may, how they have alternate posters according to the country it's being sold in, or marketing, or whatever. I think one of the posters I'd seen, the kind of subtitle or marketing line was something along the lines of It was referencing the fact that there was this amazing child who was a gangster, but was also vulnerable, and like just kind of describing the characteristics of Chappie. And then the last line is, he just happens to be a robot. And so basically, yes, what you're saying there was actually pitched in terms of the marketing of the film, was that it was a film about childhood and child rearing, but in the context of, well, it just, the child in this case just happens to be a robot.
Yeah.
So very much.
So you've got the gang, which is Dee Antwood being Ninja the man and Yolandi the woman. They're actually called by Chappie mother and father. Yeah, mommy and daddy. Yeah, so Yolandi is mommy, and she's the one who names Chappie too. So that's what a mother does, names a child. So she's very much the mother. Ninja's very much the father. So he calls him daddy all the time. And then you've got Deon as the creator. Yeah. And that's so there's all sorts of so you've got the typical mommy daddy. Okay, we got that. That's Dee Antwood. And then Deon is the alchemical father in the godlike sense, in that he's bringing this new form of life into being in the world. He is an alchemist, definitely, and he's a god of sorts, and he is referred to as the creator. There's some of that going on there.
Yeah, he calls him his maker. He just says, whenever he's whenever he's talking to him directly, he says maker this and maker that. There's a weird family dynamics going on there. The Yolandi character, well, it's not even a character, as you say. I mean, the aunt would just play themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
But Yolandi immediately takes on a maternal role, and a maternal instincts kick in, and she feels very, very sort of nurturing towards it, and wanting to she's even scenes where she's got it in bed reading it like bedtime stories and all this kind of stuff, whereas the ninja character,
he's a bad father.
It's a bad father.
He's a bad father.
He wants to teach Chappie how to be a gangster for his own ends, basically, because he owes another gangster money, and he wants to, as we said before, he wants to just teach Chappie to, be a fighting, killing machine to go and do his dirty work for him. Yeah. And so there's a kind of conflict that runs throughout the film between Yolandi and Ninja in terms of her desire to mother him and nurture him, exactly in the same way as she would a child, and Ninja's desire to just use him as a machine for his own kind of
and Ninja really does abuse him a bit, I would say, and that I found very disturbing. And for me, the whole Dee Antwood characters I found very ambiguous as to whether I like them or don't. And part of that is because Ninja goes about abusing Chappie so much. It's like, how can... And the film is crafted as such that you're supposed to see them as protagonists. But I found myself having a hard time doing that. I'm like, well, this guy is such a jerk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, this is... I think another case of moral relativism creeping into films more and more these days, where the protagonist and antagonist, or the hero and the anti-hero, are not so clear anymore. The line between the two is becoming a lot more blurred. And I think that's the case with them, with Dee Antwood there, because, they sort of embody some characteristics and traits which are kind of humorous and entertaining. And as I said before, we've got Yolandi being very nurturing and caring towards him and expressing good, genuine, compassionate human emotions, which we would all agree with and sympathize with and empathize with, etc. But then you've also got the ninja character doing his thing, but there's also the fact that they're gangsters and they kill people and do drug deals and stuff like that.
And this picks up on a very interesting thread I noticed as well. It has to do with parenting and bringing a child into a toxic environment, a rough world, a bad world. And this is how a lot of children in the real world are brought into a bad situation. So I mean, a lot of kids that would be like Chappie. They're brought into impoverished families. Maybe the father isn't around. The father was in a gang, so he's around. Then he's not because he's in prison. wreaks all kinds of havoc on, especially a young boy, the young boy whose father is in a gang and then he's taken away. They never sees him again. He himself will want to join a gang or a similar institution because he's looking for that father figure. And they definitely were playing up this dynamic in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
I noticed that CHAPPiE himself is acting like a gangster and all that, and he's rebelling against both of his fathers. But I don't know, it gets so complex.
It does get very complex. But there's a process there, because what happens is after CHAPPiE is sort of initialized and it comes into life, the gangsters, Deon would just kind of kick Deon out and say, right, you've given us this, robot we can use, not piss off, and but regardless, Deon continues to visit and try and sort of, I guess, nurture him and rear him in some way.
He tries to teach him painting and things like that, the higher things in
exactly. And he also makes CHAPPiE promise him that he will not engage in any kind of criminal or harmful activities. He basically says, you must promise me that you're not going to, get involved in these people's lifestyles, and you can't, do any of this heist that they want to pull off, and you can't kill people or hurt people or anything like that. And CHAPPiE actually makes that promise, but then, there's obviously a big conflict there with Ninja's interests. So Ninja decides to sort of, I guess, sort of force CHAPPiE through a process of initiation, I suppose.
Yeah, it's very much like a gang initiation, the things that he does to him, the way he abuses him. Yeah.
There's also a kind of an occult kind of tinge to it as well, because
gangs and the occult are very much linked together, I would just throw in.
Well, yeah, I mean, in fact, we'll come to that in a minute, but what I was just going to say was what Ninja does when he realizes that CHAPPiE is kind of refusing to go along with his agendas and is not going to do the stuff he wants to do is kind of teach CHAPPiE a lesson. And so he basically puts him in a van, drives him to some really rough neighborhood, and just throws him out the van and says, right, fend for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have a taste of the real world. And CHAPPiE gets abused, and he has bottles thrown at him. He even gets set on fire, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because what happens is after that point, he kind of stumbles back to the abode, all sort of broken and whatnot.
Well, was he intercepted by the military guy in that process as well?
Yeah, they tried to. The other kind of Deon's antagonist at work within the military industrial corporation.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned him. He plays a pivotal role.
Very important. Yeah.
Very important role in this. But we'll get back to him. But yeah, he gets accosted. He gets sort of kidnapped rather by
Hugh
this
Jackman
other guy.
is the guy who plays this character.
Yeah, he gets accosted by the Hugh Jackman character, but then he escapes captivity and eventually makes his way back to the abode. And after that point in time, after he's been abused, after he's been captured, he's had an arm sawn off. He's had all these horrible things done to him by nasty humans. And what we see is after that point in time, he does become a lot more receptive to the idea that in order to survive in this rough, crazy world, you have to do bad things. You have to fend for yourself. You have to be tough. You have to make compromises, ethically speaking, in order to get by. And so I think we see a sort of a ritualistic trial by fire.
He got passed through fire.
And he lost his vulnerability. And he comes out the other side, sort of having been initiated into the true ways of the world. And there's kind of a social Darwinistic tinge to it there.
Yes, definitely. This is a very dark concept because it's the worst of the world that we're seeing here, and it's the exact same thing that gangs use on poor, broken young men that are looking for a father figure. They exploit that, and then they play up all the violence. And you got to act tough, you got to be violent, and that's the compensatory technique used to make up for the fact that they're broken on the inside and they don't know what to do about it. So they just have to act tough. They have to kill things. They themselves will be abused, and they have to act like a man and take it, and then go turn things around and abuse something else. And there's so much going on here. I mean, definitely gangs use that. And I would say that the military sort of does the same thing, and it exploits young men that are looking for father figures and are prone to violence because of that in a large part. And they use that to enlist men and get them to do violent things. Yeah,
and desensitize them as well. I mean, if you look at the these drill sergeants for the Marine Corps and stuff. I mean, the kind of tests and trials that they put the guys through when they've got some guy screaming and abusing them in their ear, whilst they're scrubbing a floor or something like that, and just treating them like absolute dirt. Yeah.
And the odd thing is that can seem like a good thing, and it can feel good in an odd way to the guy who is going through the initiation process and being humiliated and tortured. Yeah. There's so much going on here. And as you were saying, okay, so Ninja drops off CHAPPiE. He leaves him to fend for himself. He gets beat up by the street punks, and so he runs away from that. Then he gets intercepted by Hugh Jackman and the military guys. They're like, okay, we got him. And they pull him into a van, and they begin to really abuse him. And I'll be honest here. When I was watching this scene in the theater, I actually cried. And I don't like admitting this, but I did. Because what it's depicting is hardcore child abuse.
It's child abuse,
I could barely watch it. I was like, this is horrible. And it really got me. And it was violent. I'll say more about it later, but it literally made me cry. It was too much.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can absolutely see where you're coming from there, because they did a fantastic job in this film in terms of the human-machine bonding element. I mean, we really, really are drawn into sympathizing and identifying with CHAPPiE, and we really do, as the audience, come to see him as a child.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about these types of scenes when he's being abused, it is literally, for us, on an emotional level, child abuse.
Yeah.
In the most horrific way possible. And, he's not only being physically abused, he's being verbally abused, abused in every way possible, humiliated, left abandoned. It's like every bad thing a parent or society could possibly do to a child, CHAPPIE has done to him.
Yeah, it's all done at one time,
and it's all done at the same time. So I can totally see where you're coming from there, and I'd be lying if I said that I didn't feel any strong emotions.
Yeah, it was terrible. And the other thing that was really getting to me, that really made me break down like that, was the fact that in my mind, so I had the emotional part, but I also had the intellectual part going, in that I realized that it was depicting something very real and something very incredibly dark, and something that most of the audience wouldn't pick up on, I don't think. And that thing in particular would be military inflicting this sort of abuse as a matter of course, and this being a military sort of thing. And I do think that there is such a thing as intergenerational military abuse families, that they intergenerationally they abuse each other, and it goes on and on down the line, that they kind of tend the parents and the offspring, they all work within the military sphere. And that there's actually a clique of these people who have a tremendous amount of influence, but they're also living a life apart from the rest of society that very few people even ever recognize that this is going on. But I mean, this kind of gets into the whole Laurel Canyon thing that Dave McGowan gets into. Yeah. He really hints at this reality, and I've just noticed things in my life to point to the fact that this is actually going on. That's the way I see things.
Yeah, I've seen interviews with people who claim to have come from long lineages of military families, high military people, generals and high intelligence people and things like that. And there's a common thread of abuse there, a common thread of also military having their own sort of secret societies, which are very, very dark, almost sort of like Anton LaVey's Satan type stuff, very, very sort of very, very dark, and very, very abusive, and a lot of kind of even like cases where people claim that there's the proper mind control programs running down through generations.
It gets into that. It does. And people will, I'm sure a lot of listeners will be like, what is all this? Or people who are new to this show will be like, what are you talking about? But I mean, I don't know. I've come across a lot of not only research information, but actually real world experience where you just meet these strange people and you try to make account for what is wrong with them because they got serious psychological problems, and you find out they're in the military and all this and that, and it starts to paint this kind of picture. At least, I mean, I've known people like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've also known people who've come from military/intelligence backgrounds, and they have almost exactly the same personality profile, and it's basically what kind of Thomas Sheridan would call a proto-psychopathic personality type. Whereas in as much as they may not necessarily be sort of clinical psychopaths, but their behavior is pathological. And is low on the empathy side, to say the least.
I've found that they tend to be successful in one way, shape, or form too. They have some level of success, like they own a business, or they excelled in some sort of sport when they were a kid, or all those things. Have you found that?
Yeah, I found that as well, and I think that just generally comes from a kind of the societal status and privilege that is afforded to them through being in these types of families, but B, the kind of training and the education that they get.
Yeah, I think it's strict discipline.
Basically, well, that's it. Yeah, what I was getting is the discipline imbued on them by not only their sort of families, but the institutions that they were raised in as well. Yeah. So I think a lot of it comes from that.
Yeah, but I guess maybe we should return to the movie here. I mean, this gets into the Hugh Jackman character who's named Vincent in the film. What do you have to say about that character, Adam?
Well, he was the obvious diametrically opposed antagonist in this scenario, where we have the Deon character who sort of represents the idealist, the genius. He's created this.
He's gentle.
He's gentle. He's gentle. He wants to nurture CHAPPiE. He sees him as his child in a way, and but then he's opposed by this other Hugh Jackman character working at the same corporation, who is working on a separate project, which he is being given limited funding for, and his funding keeps getting cut each year, and he's really angry with Deon about this. He's kind of in competition with him, but his idea is that any robotic police force or sort of military-industrial application for robotics must be facilitated through direct human control, and that robots should not be autonomous in any way, shape, or form. They should not have their own computers inside their heads to make their own decisions for them. It should be done via remote control, with the human brain making the decisions.
Because humans are more ethical, is the assumption.
Yeah, and he's been working on a project called Moose, which is this huge, big.
It looks like Ed 209 from RoboCop. That's what it is.
Yeah. It's basically
looks just like it.
I was trying to pick the thing that it looked like, and that's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's this big sort of clunky thing, and he hooks it up to this sort of brain-machine interface which reads your brain waves and transfers it, via remote control to this thing. So, that's his big idea.
It's got all sorts of like anti-aircraft weapons and stuff. And it's hilarious. In the one scene, he's pitching it to a police force.
Police department.
You can take out the enemy's aircraft, and the guy's like,
we're talking about gangs here, like street thugs,
We're talking about urban crime. What kind of aircraft?
That was quite amusing. Yeah, I mean, that's when that sort of sales pitch meeting. Yeah, when he's talking about they were taking out the enemy's aircraft, and like we're talking about like shop robbers here. And but anyway, the most predominant aspect of his character I found was the fact that they made a point to illustrate him as being aggressive, as being a soldier, or an ex-soldier at least anyway. Yes. And also a fundamental Christian, which I found to be very, very interesting.
That. Yeah. He was talking about church, wasn't he?
Yeah. He mentions that on a number of occasions, and he lacks virtue. He lacks true virtue. He has the appearance of virtue and the appearance of being a good company man and a Christian and a whatever, a good human being.
He's ex-military, so you got to worship him, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He wears the mask of a
fine, upstanding citizen, a good guy. He's done everything right. He's got a good job and everything. Yeah,
and he's a Christian. He goes to church. How could you possibly, think that this guy was anything other than that?
Yeah.
But of course, we find out that he's actually a very, very dark character. He's the one that abuses CHAPPiE. He's the one who is threatening Deon the whole time.
He's the one who cuts CHAPPIE's arm off.
Yeah, he cuts exactly.
He does the worst abuse to him. He chops his arm right off.
Yeah, after abusing him and telling them that he's just a clunk.
Yeah, he verbally, that's the thing too. He doesn't just cut his arm off. He's verbally abusing him the whole time and belittling him and telling him he's nothing, he's not alive, as he's physically abusing him. So it's a double whammy. It's crazy. Yeah. That scene was too much.
Yeah, it was. I mean, one of the things that he was saying when he was verbally abusing CHAPPiE, when he's got them sort of locked up in the back of the truck or whatever it was, is he's saying to him, you think you're alive, but you're not. You're just a machine. There's nothing in there. There's no soul. And if that was the case, then why bother insulting him? Why bother trying to psychologically damage something which cannot be psychologically damaged because it doesn't have a psyche? So there's kind of a bit of cognitive dissonance there on his part, I think.
Yeah.
But I think what they were trying to do with that character was just play him up as the I don't know. In some ways, he's a neo-Luddite because he doesn't want to allow artificial intelligence to come to fruition. But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, the only other option is you've kind of got a dialectical situation going on there where you've got, okay, this is the way the future's going. We're going to have one form of robotics or another. Yeah. And the sort of I don't know the character we're drawn to identify with, the Deon character, who has all these sort of virtuous qualities, is the one who's pushing for, full-on artificial general intelligence, whereas the sort of neo-Luddite Christian Hugh Jackman is basically calling this a demonic, satanic abomination, with no spirit and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and all the humans can be ethical, so they're the ones who have to make the decisions and all that, yeah.
Yeah, I think they really just tried to create a dialectic there. In one sense, it was confined to this. It was confined in as much as it was. Well, either way, it's going to be robotics. But but the dialectic was that the Christian thinks that human beings are the center of the universe, that they are the highest form of life. And he's proven wrong, of course, in this case when CHAPPiE, becomes sentient, and so he is portrayed as being basically stupid. And so I kind of almost felt that was a little kind of attack on religion there.
It very well may have been. Yeah,
I mean, I think they went to lengths to just sort of associate the idea of anyone who is resistant to the idea of artificial general intelligence and the creation of essentially a new species is kind of a neo-Luddite, aggressive, ignorant Christian. That's the kind of general association I think they were trying to make there, because that's definitely what I came away with from him in terms of his character and what he does throughout the film.
Yeah. He's the perfect bad guy there. I've got to admit that one of the reasons I like the movie so much is that I thought it was accurate in portraying the military-industrial complex and its vested interest in the technological sphere. And it's in the very same vein of what was on my head going into the theater that day. As I was saying before, I was thinking, a sentient AGI that actually had emotion by some miracle, because I personally think that probably wouldn't happen within the machine, but that's a whole nother issue. But if by some crazy miracle that happened, and it had empathy, and it was super intelligent, and it could be benevolent, well, hey, all right, it could depose all the powers that be that aren't benevolent, that are malevolent, I would argue, and they would be incredibly, they wouldn't want to see this AGI come to being. And the Hugh Jackman character was so good at portraying, all the dark things about the military-industrial complex and the people within that, and how the real dark individuals who have influence and they're flying under the radar even within the military-industrial complex. I'm sure most of the people working there don't recognize this little subsect of characters. But I thought it did a really good job at using that Hugh Jackman character to show that. So that's what had me on board with the movie, really.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that because, again, he's presented as this fine, upstanding citizen who is virtuous and who is, he's an ex-soldier, so we have to respect him for that. And he's also somewhat of a mechanical genius in himself, and that he has created his own sort of prototype robot, etc. But at the same time, not only does he abuse the CHAPPiE character or the CHAPPiE robot and try and destroy him, but he also eventually decides that the only way that he's going to get his project off the ground, this big moose thing, that kind of Robocop thing you mentioned before, is to force a situation whereby that it would be necessary to deploy it. And so what he does is he actually goes off and without getting into all the technical details, he finds a way of deactivating all of the entire network of robot police force throughout Johannesburg.
Yeah.
Because he knows that crime will be so rampant as soon as these droids just drop dead on the street that something will have to be done, and the police force will be desperate, the corporation will be desperate, and they'll finally call on him and say, right, go ahead and it's the time to test your prototype out. And I guess we're sort of skipping towards the end there. But
that's such an important point because it shows that he's willing to create chaos in order to promote himself as the order that can, order out of chaos in the dark sense. That this guy is kind of like a false flag sort of event that he's.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I mean, I was just about to say that. He he puts on the mask of the fine, upstanding citizen, who does all the right things, but then he's willing to create absolute chaos and death and destruction, and destroy somebody else's career.
It's only
for his own agendas.
Yeah, it's only to legitimate him as a power figure, as an authority figure. That's the only reason he needs to be an authority figure. So he goes about trashing society so that it needs him as the authority figure. Yeah, and then there's even scenes there. I mean, a couple of other scenes with the Hugh Jackman character, which were interesting, was before this kind of sequence comes about, where he goes and switches off the rest of the droids so he can create the chaos and deploy his own robot. He needs to find the guard key. There's some little chip that they need to activate it, or whatever the story is, and he knows that Deon has it because Deon's used it for CHAPPiE. And there's a scene where the Hugh Jackman character, I think it's Vincent, isn't it? Yeah, Vincent,
he confronts him in the office. It's just this kind of really regular looking office, actually. It's quite strange, that, but it looks like a paper factory or something. I don't know. But he confronts him in the office and says, "Oh, can I just have the guard key?" And Deon's saying, "Well, you know that's not possible, and we have protocols and regulations regarding that kind of thing." And he actually pulls a gun out. And pulls a gun on Deon in the office in front of everybody else.
He does it right there.
Threatens him. Yeah. And he actually he threatens him really, really viciously, and basically talks about the fact that you've been stealing all my funding and you're destroying my career, and I'm not going to let you be the end of me. And so there's big.
And then right after that, he turns around and acts like he's just playing.
Yeah, that's how he gets away with it. And that scene I found to be quite kind of implausible. I thought that was a bit silly because I thought, he's just literally pressed Deon's face against the desk and held him down there at gunpoint with a pistol forced into his mouth almost.
The other people working wouldn't just be like, "Oh, okay." You're right.
Exactly. I mean, he stands up and goes, "Oh, I'm joking, mate. It was a prank. Don't worry. I thought it was serious. Look at this. Come on, lighten up, mate. Come to church."
The thing is, I agree with that, and that was an exaggeration, but it's an exaggeration of something real again, and why this Hugh Jackman Vincent character is so good, and that personality type really does use fear and intimidation and threats of violence and actual violence against their friends, even to like show that they love them in a twisted sense. Like that's what they do to each other's friends. And then Deon isn't like him, so he can't handle that. So he'll do it to him too, and then he'll act like, "Oh, come on, we're buddies. I'll see you at the bar tonight." But Deon's like, "Hey, man, no way."
Well, yeah. I mean, that's that's very well observed, because when he stands up and sort of tries to play it off as a prank to the rest of the office, because I think people start to notice something's going on here. There's some conflict. He sort of stands up and says, "Oh, it was just a joke, and take it easy, mate. It was a prank. Bloody blah." And he kind of walks back to his desk and he says, "Oh, remember, church Sunday morning."
Yeah, something that was it. Okay.
I thought that was quite well done in terms of the contrast between the real character and the mask that he puts on.
Yes.
To do his job and to get by and to fulfill his own interests, etc. Which is very, very much in line with what we were talking about before, in terms of the, I guess, the archetypical military-industrial pathological personality type,
Yeah. This was such a good character, and the whole... I loved the film. I really loved it, except for the very end, and we'll get to that soon enough. But it was working on so many levels, and that's why I really liked it. I mean, you've got the Hugh Jackman character here being the military guy, and he's inflicting abuse on CHAPPiE, along with the family being a Antwood ninja inflicting abuse too. And so you get CHAPPiE, who started out as a naive little baby. He develops quick, right? Because he's advanced intelligence, but he's still naive throughout the whole film. And he's going out carrying out crimes, and he doesn't even know it. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the ninja character convinces... Well, ninja.
Yeah, ninja.
He convinces him to carry out crimes on the pretense that what he's actually doing are acts of benevolence or acts of genuine justice of some form or another. Due to CHAPPIE's naivete, he convinces him that he gets him to go and steal a car, for instance. He basically tells CHAPPIE, "Oh, that's the man that stole Daddy's car. You have to go and get Daddy's car back. That's a good thing." And so CHAPPIE goes and sort of basically carjacked somebody in a really violent way, thinking that what he's doing is actually virtuous and is all about justice. So
I found that fascinating too, because he's this advanced intelligence that eventually unlocks the mystery of downloading consciousness into a computer. He ends up doing that, but at the same time, he's naive enough to fall for Ninja's tricks. You know what I mean? I thought that was pretty profound too.
Well, I mean, I think, again, obviously we get on a massive tangent here in terms of, like, what is artificial intelligence? Would it even be possible for any type of artificial intelligence to have emotions? But I think in the context of this film, it stands to reason that his logical intelligence and his computing capacity would develop faster than his emotional intelligence.
There you go.
That kind of makes sense. So in terms of him being able to be sort of coerced and conned into performing these criminal acts on pretense that they were actually acts of justice and virtue, And
that actually points to the fact that emotional intelligence and things that are uniquely human are actually far more in advance than what we give them credit to. We're all like worshiping intellect and what an AI would presumably be able to understand intellectually or analytically. We're not
processing power.
All that kind of crap, like the numbers and all that. We're not thinking about, what about emotion? Would it even be possible for a machine to have that? And if it did, would it be able to process that? And how long would that take? Because it's so complex and we don't even realize it.
And this is we see this with the Deon character. He's kind of doing all this research on how to raise a child in terms of a human child. He's like looking up, becoming a parent and your child's first words, and he brings CHAPPIE a whole bunch of toys, and books and things like that. And while at the same time, Ninja is teaching him how to shoot guns and throw knives and do all this other ninja type stuff,
Ninja stars. He teaches them how to throw a ninja star.
So, it's actually, exactly, yeah. But it got me. It kind of got me thinking about a certain dynamic, which I found to be very, very interesting in terms of the relationship between Deon and CHAPPiE here. Because one of the things which we didn't mention was the fact that CHAPPIE's existence came about through the fact that one of these sort of programmable controlled droids that were just part of the police force had become damaged in some kind of fight or whatever it was. And Deon had then just sort of stolen it from the factory before it got liquidated and recycled to go and test his new artificial intelligence program in it. But that particular robot that becomes CHAPPiE actually has a fused battery, which means he only has 5 days of life left in him. And I thought that was very, very interesting that they drew a lot of attention to the fact that Deon, the creator, made CHAPPiE essentially mortal when all the other robots could have replaced batteries. They could live forever, presumably. Whereas the CHAPPiE character is actually created with only 5 days of life left in him due to the fact that he's a damaged robot. He's got this, fused battery, etc. And I think they really tried to draw your attention to the fact that CHAPPIE's lifespan was so short, in being only 5 days, because I think there was perhaps an agenda there to try and, I don't know, compare that with human existence and the transhuman ideology and the ideas like life extension in general.
Yeah, it humanizes the machine more too when it can die.
Yeah, exactly. So it humanizes the machine. The machine is, we have a situation where the machine has the potential to be immortal. It has the potential to live forever and be a so-called superior form of life. But its creator has stifled that immortality in some way, not deliberately, but just because of the circumstances. And CHAPPiE actually gets angry with his creator. He gets angry at Deon and says, "Why did you only, create me so I could die 5 days later?" Yeah. And so I found that very interesting, and we'll get more get into that in a bit more detail towards the end, I think.
Sure.
But yeah, that just kind of popped into my head, and I just wanted to get it out while I remember it, because I felt that they really wanted to draw your attention to the whole concept of mortality versus immortality in having CHAPPiE with only 5 days left to live, and that being a very undesirable situation, and the creator having done that to him deliberately, and him being angry at his creator for doing so. And I think there's a lot of parallels there with the, I guess, higher occult traditions within the transhuman movement, I think.
Definitely some occult concepts in there of the imperfection of the creator, but also the sort of revolt against a creator that did not provide everything that was seemingly available to the creation, and sort of the war between creator and creation, or the familial fight, as though the father fights with the son when the son starts coming of age. There's the fight, there's the conflict. And that ties into the occult. It ties into, the idea of God and the child, and the creator God and the human being, and the family dynamic there. But we have that going on between human and machine here. So, we come to the next level down where the man becomes the creator, and that alchemical project is seen through, and that a new form of life is brought into the world. So you get the same family dynamic going on. And this goes back to the beginning when we were talking about family dynamics. It's very much played up in here. And humanizing the machine. The CHAPPiE is subject to all the shortcomings that a human boy would be. It's kind of a Pinocchio-like thing. He becomes a real boy, and he finds himself in the midst of a violent street gang. He takes out, he starts walking and talking like a street thug, and he starts, carjacking and things like this, and he starts being rebellious to his creator. So he starts rebelling against the creator, right? That gets back to the occult concept we're talking about here, the rebellion against God, and saying, hey, look, Father, I know better than you. You know what I mean? So there's all sorts of levels going on here.
Yeah, there's a lot of different levels with that. And as you say, we have the whole scenario where CHAPPiE starts to rebel, and he has these arguments with Deon, and is angry at Deon for only giving him 5 days of life, and the story, as the story moves on, CHAPPiE realizes that he has the ability to actually upload consciousness and to create a digital copy of consciousness, because previously in the film, Deon had told CHAPPiE that we can't simply move you are conscious, right, and we can't simply move you into a new body because we don't know what consciousness is yet. Even though it's a file that he's uploaded into the robot, he's still saying, well, you're now something more than that. You now have consciousness, and we don't know what that is. Therefore, we don't have the ability to simply move you into a new body. And so CHAPPiE takes it upon himself eventually to, I guess, rebel against his creator and overcome the limitations placed on him by his creator in researching consciousness, and eventually finds a way of uploading his own consciousness onto a computer so that it can be transferred elsewhere into a different robot, and thus attaining immortality, I suppose.
Yeah,
in a very sort of transcendent Johnny Depp style.
Yeah, definitely. And now we're getting towards the end, so I say let's just finish this thing off here. And yes, so the climax of the film. Let's talk about that. That's very exciting. You want to describe it, Adam?
I mean, I suppose what happens. I mean, there's the whole scenario where, the aunt would owe the gangster money. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what happens in terms of whether. What happens is there's a big sort of showdown at the gangster's lair where the sort of the other drug dealer gangster shows up to try and collect his money, and he also says that he wants the robot, blah, blah, blah.
And crime is going crazy because Hugh Jackman's made all the police force go down. So crime's going crazy. So you get Deon clashing with the other criminals that were a problem in the beginning, and Hugh Jackman's getting all psyched up because he finally gets the permission to use his Moose project. Like, okay, this is his moment. So the climax comes when he's firing up the Moose, and he sends that out after CHAPPiE and Deon and the rest of them, and the criminals at large, I guess.
That's basically it. I mean, he gets authorization from the corporation head, played by Sigourney Weaver, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I thought so. I definitely thought so. Yeah.
He gets authorization, and so he puts on his brain machine interface skull cap thing, whatever you want to call it, and sort of remotely controls this thing and flies it across the city to the gangster's lair. So we've got a situation where you've got sort of two gangs kind of coming to a head, where CHAPPIE is also present. I think Deon is also present at the same time.
Yeah, and they're all there.
They're all there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Hugh Jackman Moose thing flies in and just starts shooting up the place.
Destroying
missiles and machine guns and everything, and they have this whole big battle with it. Blah 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 blah.
There's a gruesome segment where it chops in half the body of one of the other Deon friend. This guy called America. He's the gang member too. So it's really disgusting, and it chops him in half, and it's like, oh goodness.
Yeah, that was kind of shocking.
Yes, definitely.
It was. I'm not sure why they felt they had to do that, but I mean, again, it's just drawing into the darkness of the Hugh Jackman character.
Exactly.
Because we see him controlling the robot, and he's going, "Yeah, come on."
Yeah, he's a sadist. He's a sadist.
He's extremely sadistic, and especially in that last segment there where he finally gets permission to take the Moose off and start shooting the place up.
Yeah, his true colors come out.
Yeah, exactly. His true colors come out, and he's laughing and saying, "Oh, come on, give me some more," and he's just blowing things up and killing people left, right, and center.
And the whole thing that's key to the story, too, is that he's doing this remotely. So he gets to be sadistic and not even be there and just kill people from miles away. And that's all part of his...
What does that remind you of?
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely making the drone point there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And his whole spiel was, humans are the only creatures capable of ethics, so they need to be the ones controlling the machines. And so that whole argument just blows up on itself because it's like, look, it's a sadistic guy telling you that.
Yeah, he goes and does he goes and does the most unethical sequence of actions you could possibly imagine. You know? Yeah. With this big bloody robot, you know. But yeah, that's the kind of climax there. And in this battle, of course, Deon unfortunately he gets shot. And so he's sort of slowly bleeding to death, and then Yolandi also gets shot.
Yep.
She dies instantly. But CHAPPiE realizes that because he's been able to sort of come up with this new technology to actually upload consciousness into a hard drive, he'd already made a copy of Yolandi's consciousness, and he's actually got it on a USB stick, and it says "Mommy's consciousness," which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
He decides to take Deon back to the military-industrial building. And sort of plug him into the brain-machine interface, upload his consciousness, and then he basically gets Deon's consciousness transferred into one of these droids. So Deon transcends, so to speak.
Yes.
Becomes one of these droids himself.
He looks just like CHAPPiE, except he's orange.
Yeah, he's all brand new. Yeah,
he's brought back to life. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's obviously some occult significance of that.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, the creator being brought back to life by the creation.
Yeah.
Pretty.
And then he serves the same role with CHAPPiE, because CHAPPiE gets deactivated at that point, and so he then transfers CHAPPIE's consciousness into another robot, and they meet up, and so now Deon and CHAPPiE, the creator and creation, are now equal.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways you could look at that, but very definite occult significance there.
Absolutely.
And they also do the same thing with the Yolandi character who's died. Obviously, Ninja's very upset with this, and so I think he remembers that her consciousness is actually sitting there on a USB stick, and so he hands that to Deon and CHAPPiE, and the final scene of the film is some Deantwood music playing with a new droid being built with the face of Yolandi. So it's actually got a different face to all of the other robots, and it ties in with a lot of the stuff that you see in Deantwood's music videos, which is there's kind of a lot of cross-cultural references going on there.
Yeah.
So Yolandi, Deon, and CHAPPiE all have new bodies, and they keep using that term over and over again, new bodies, which I found quite interesting.
So not only is the creator father brought back to life, the mother is as well. Highly occult. And for me, this is where the movie lost me, the end, with the uploading the consciousness and coming back to life and all that. Because up to this point, I was like, yes, this movie is amazing. It's making really good points. At the same time, it's right where I am in my headspace this morning for whatever reason. The exact same things I was thinking are in this movie. But then at the end, they just tack on the uploading consciousness idea. It really felt tacked on to me, and it upset me. I was like, well, what is this stuff?
Yeah, it's funny because, to be honest, I didn't see it coming.
No, I didn't.
I didn't. I don't know why. I mean, I probably should have expected it, but I didn't think that was what the film was about. I didn't really have any. I suppose there are plenty of clues in terms of the whole all the scenes where CHAPPiE is uploading the consciousness into hard drives and stuff like that. But I wasn't really expecting it, and so when it happened, it was like, what? Yeah, it just felt like somebody's forced this. Somebody in the production team has said, you must. This has got to be the way it ends.
It definitely seemed forced. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, exactly what happened there, I don't know, because as I said at the beginning there, I have looked at a lot of the interviews with Blomkamp, and he says very, very little about the film or about some of these types of ideas. So, I don't know. I mean, the fact that he says so little may be speaking volumes.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I think that is... that seems about right. I don't know. We can't say for sure, but it seems right to me.
It's the only explanation I can come up with that seems plausible and feasible to me, is that there has been involvement and influence from people who really wanted that to be the conclusion of the film. They get you to identify with CHAPPiE, they really get you to bond with him, and get you to sort of on board with all of the ideas that they're presenting in the film, and then just sort of draw you to that conclusion that this is the natural, inevitable course of events that would come out of a situation like this, and this is the only way it could be, I guess.
Yeah.
Again, very forced and kind of took me by surprise. And I've heard other people say similar things who've seen the film, that they were watching the film and then they just were like, "What?"
Exactly. So the film doesn't seem to have gotten very good reviews, which I'm surprised at, because I really did think it was excellent for the most part, except for that end where they ruined it. I thought it was really good, so I was surprised that people didn't like it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I looked at the box office figures, and it didn't. I mean, they made a profit, obviously, but it didn't do as well as his two previous big blockbuster films in District 9 and Elysium. They were much more popular, and I've read some of the reviews, and they tend to differ. You seem to have, I seem to determine sort of three camps in terms of the critics, where you had the critics who said it was complete rubbish, it was all forced, it was all kind of just jumbled together and it didn't make any sense, and then you had critics who said it was fantastic and it was an amazing exploration of all these different themes and ideas, and then you sort of had critics who said it was good in some ways but not so good in other ways. So it had a lot of mixed reviews, and I don't know, I mean, I thought it would be a much more popular and well-received film than it was.
It seemed like it was going to be coming into it, so hard to say what's going on, if it's a promotional thing or what, but overall, one of the better movies I think that we've reviewed. I would definitely say that. It's got good ideas in there, and I guess we can leave this review here for now. Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that just about covers it. I mean, I think the only thing that I would add on would just be the cross-cultural reference there, in the fact that they had Deon would play themselves in the film. And if you look at the music videos and the sort of aesthetic in terms of like the kind of fashion and the sound and all and all the rest of it, they are very, very transhuman and very, very nihilistic in the way they come across. And they bring all of their aesthetics into that film. All the artwork and their layer is very much the same type of artwork and art design that you would see in a Deon with music video. And so I think there was a deliberate attempt to, I don't know, propagate some kind of cross-cultural phenomena here.
Yeah, definitely. I myself was annoyed by the fact that they wore their own T-shirts, their own band T-shirts in the movie. I'm like, this is going too far. You know what I mean? Using your own names is one thing, but wearing the band T-shirt with your own picture at that on it, that just annoyed me. Yeah.
I mean, there were a few scenes where there was like you just saw the words Deon really blatantly on somebody's T-shirt or spray painted on a wall or something. I just thought,
it was Ninja was wearing the D. Antwood shirt, so it had the name of his own band, but beyond that, it had his own face on the front.
Oh yeah.
So he's wearing a shirt that has his own face and his own band name in a movie where he's playing himself. It's just like it's shameless self-promotion to a new kind of level I've never even seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that, again, interesting, because, again, if we go back to the interviews with Blomkamp on this, where he says that the inspiration for the film came from him, I think, storyboarding another film, I think one of his previous films, and he was drawing robots, and he was listening to Deon on the radio or whatever, and he said, I just came up with the idea that wouldn't it be cool to make a film about a robot that's artificially intelligent and gets raised by the band Deon. And that's really the genesis of this film?
Bizarre,
I mean, it's just that seemed really glib and kind of fake, and as if he wanted to brush over something there.
Yeah.
And so I kind of tend to intuit that there might have been more to it there. Again, with the whole cross-cultural referencing there, with a pop cultural phenomenon sort of being just injected into this film, because they have so much in common, aesthetically speaking and almost ideologically speaking, with a lot of the themes and ideas in the film.
Yeah, Yeah, there's something going on there for sure. But yeah, this has been a fun review as always, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope people enjoyed it. There's no doubt many other tangents we could go down, but time is limited as usual. But this film fits the profile of so many other films that are coming out right now. But I think this is probably one of the better ones.
Yeah.
And so I thought it's worth seeing. I would say, people. I would recommend this film. Yeah. But yeah, it's been good. And once again, we should probably mention the fact that we have our new website up right now, which is tmpodcast.com. Mm-hmm. So that's where all the reviews and discussions we have will be posted.
Yeah, and we have the unique feed for this podcast, so subscribe to it in RSS, on iTunes, Stitcher Radio. Subscribe to that feed because it's specific to themes and memes. So make sure you do that. Yeah.
That's right, and I've been posting some articles, and there's a few other things I'll be posting, and so the website is slowly but surely beginning to become filled up with content. So I would just encourage people to.
I'm excited.
Yeah, people can keep checking back, and we're just going to keep posting more stuff, and it's going to be good. Mm-hmm. But if people want to listen to your stuff, Aaron, they can go to theageoftransitions.com, where you post your Transresistor Radio episodes and other articles and pieces of interest, etc. So
yep. So check that out, theageoftransitions.com, and the new Themes and Memes website, tmpodcast.com. Check them both out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure what we're going to do next month. It's a long way off.
You know what? I'll just throw in the movie Tomorrowland is coming out, and that might be good. So that's a possibility.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I saw the trailer for that actually, so that might be a good one to cover. But yeah, we will be back shortly with another review. So stay tuned. Keep checking on the website. New content will be uploaded, and thank you very much for listening to Themes and Memes.
Today's episode was recorded on the 21st of April, 2015.
why the argue is hot. Just the acapella kids, let's see what you got.